and through all the departments that need to kind of pre-approve everything before we bring it to the commission. And this is really exciting because essentially the presence of the task force has basically created an outlet for folks to reach out, because we are continuing to hear about incidents of homophobia, transphobia within the city of Brownsville. So folks reach out to us because they want to find a way to help. Unfortunately, we don't have anything on paper, right, to like from the city specifically to offer them any kind of help. We luckily have a lot of relationships within the city with other, again, nonprofits, organizations, advocacy groups. So we try to link people up to those services and to those resources whenever necessary. But you know, some of the things that we're continuing to do outside of just celebrating June Pride Month, right, is we're doing these once a month meriendas now that we're kicking off to create these spaces for just informal conversations with the community so that they can come hang out with the task force. Let's talk about what are some things that are happening that maybe we're not 100% being in tune with. This last one we did at Seventh Park, we had a young trans youth who basically came to us and said told us about all the great things their parent was helping them do in terms of supporting them at VISD and the work that VISD is doing to support queer and trans youth. So that's really exciting. We wouldn't have heard about it, right, if we didn't have this space. So we're looking to continue these meriendas once a month as an informal space for our community to connect with us.
To also look for a way to formalize a process for people to be able to submit when something does happen. We don't have anything of that nature. We are fortunate that people do approach us on these issues. We try to notate a lot of them. There is a couple that we do have on file that we have try to research as much as we can to provide, again, the data for you that things are still happening in our community, harassment, discrimination, things of that nature. And so I think it's vital that we continue to do the work as a task force, but most importantly, move forward as a more permanent body to be able to continue the work within the city that is still much needed that we have come to discover.
Some of the formal recommendations that we would like to share with the commission is potentially exploring and looking into creating a chief equity officer position role within the city of Brownsville. More than anything, not just for the LGBTQ task force, but for all other demographics and marginalized communities, to make sure that our programs, projects, and everything that's coming out of the city of Brownsville isn't leaving anybody behind, right? And to make sure that it's equitable in a way that, so that all the work that happens in the city of Brownsville is able to help meet the needs of everybody, regardless of their economic status, their gender identity, expression, whatever designation they identify as. And this is something that is actually in practice currently in the city of Dallas and the city of Austin.
The other recommendation that we have is that we pursue an establishment of the LGBTQ task force as a permanent board to just provide a long-term investment for LGBTQIA+ residents of Brownsville to continue to provide to you with recommendations, strategies that we have come across, and continue to promote cultural competency inclusivity within our city itself. We have drafted, sorry, next slide. There we go. We have also drafted, like Joe said, language for your consideration for the Fair Practice Ordinance. This comes from our meetings that we've had with several other legal organizations within the state of Texas. We have tried to do as much of the research for you beforehand to have it ready to answer any of your questions or concerns. We are a task force that was created to provide recommendations for you. So we're not, we're simply here to recommend that language for you that we have already put together in place. We've gone through legal with it already. So it is for your consideration. We do hope that you are able to see that need that we have discovered that we need here in the city of Brownsville.
And again, this is one of the things that when we initially talked about before the task force was created, is that what we see across the state is local municipalities organizing, coming together to kind of fill in the gaps where state law isn't really clear on how protections are supposed to be laid out for queer and trans people. And also just would make the city of Brownsville the first city in South Texas to have something like this, which would be really historic and really monumentous. And yeah, and so folks can connect with us. We have an official Facebook group that's part of the city of Brownsville Facebook page. We have almost 1,200 members and counting. We have people joining the group always. Yeah, and so we post a lot about our meetings, resources. Other people come in and comment and share what, you know, resources and information that they have available about other groups that are having meetings, just to kind of continue just sort of building that momentum as a group. And yeah, we also have an official email as well for folks who want to reach out to us. And that's also a great way for folks to connect if they're experiencing any kind of incidents, right? If it's not an emergency, right, you know, they can reach out to us, but if it is an emergency, we do ask them to kind of reach to the proper authorities as best as they can. But if there's anything that they want to share, anything the community wants to share with us, we're always open to listening to folks, because that's what we're here for.
May I just conclude with very proud of this task force for meeting consecutively for 2 years. Every month they have met, they have provided and worked with the city manager's office at an exceptional communication. I am very proud of them for the work that they have done. We have come very far, and so we look forward in continuing to work with the commission on this. We hope that you take our suggestions and considerations, so you can move forward in hopes of doing what we are recommending.
And not just our task force, right? But lastly, every department in the city who's opened their doors to us and who has been very welcoming and very understanding and very just willing to work with us in any capacity. That's something that sometimes we're just like, folks are really surprised, right? But it's like, no, it's just really surprising and exciting to see the support internally within the city of Brownsville.
Well, thank you both for coming and presenting. I can't believe it's been 2 years since,
Yes.
and longer since we met. I know that y'all met with, or Joe, I know, and Albert, I think, met with Commissioner Tetra and I. I do have a question, though, in regards to the equity officer. These other two cities, I believe you said it was Dallas and San Antonio?
And also,
Dallas and Austin, I'm sorry. Is that a dedicated position?
it's hired, it's usually done to like their city manager's office.
Okay,
And it's basically someone who reviews a lot of just like literally everything from like small projects to grants and funding and just finds ways to make sure that any project that comes out of the city isn't missing gaps and isn't leaving anybody behind, and that it's actually serving people in a way that is intentional and meaningful.
well, I understood, I think I understood the role, but I guess my question was, is that a full-time position and that's all that individual does? Okay, all right, thanks.
Any other questions?
I want to congratulate you on the story time because it's really been impactful and it's had very positive outcome. I know I have quite a few friends who have young children and they were happy to expose their children to that.
Thank you. I have nieces too, and they loved it, so.
And I want to commend you guys for your work. I take a lot of pride in having served on the task force side by side with you all, and still to this day, it amazes me how when all of us came together, very few of us knew one another. And our circles of friends did not know other members we were serving with on that task force. And I think that's just a testament to the fine job this commission did in ensuring diversity and putting this group together. And even in the LGBTQ community, I'm considered to be more conservative. And I agree with that. But I can tell you that the work I've seen these guys do, even since I've left them, is reasonable and measured. They're not radicals. They're not outrageous ideas that they're proposing. And I think we'll be impressed with what we continue to see out of them. So keep up the good work, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd just like to comment, I'd like to work with you guys more on trying to find ways to communicate with the groups that are commenting at our meetings, right? And I think that at the end of the day, it's about communication and it's about, making sure that you guys are understood properly. I think there's a lot of misunderstandings that are out there, and I don't know where these guys are coming from half the time, but I don't know. I think, I like to make sure that at least we make a good effort to be inclusive, and trying to.
And that's definitely part of our outreach and education that we're trying to build through this like safe space training. It's offering a workshop and a space for people to ask those questions that maybe they're afraid of asking, right? Because we know that sometimes people they just don't know.
Right.
And so, but yeah, we can definitely do that.
Thank you, guys.
And I just want to thank you all for all of your hard work and dedication that you've poured into this because wow, 2 years of constantly meeting and especially through the pandemic. And I have to say that when it first came to myself and the mayor, when we first met 2 years ago, that was just such a tragic situation. The way it started was because somebody was discriminated against so dreadfully and there was nothing to do about it. So this came together as an act of love and compassion that maybe there are laws maybe our state still doesn't understand that we're all one family, that we're all human mankind. But the city of Brownsville understands that different, and we're all family, whether we like it or not. We have to love each other.
That's a great,
We have to love each other and accept each other and be kind to one another because this life is hard enough. And so I'm just so grateful that the city of Brownsville started this. And I hope that the next generation of people that grow up in our city live a much different life than a lot of the stories that we heard the day that we created this. And I received many inboxes in my years. Thank you for doing this because your youth are the ones that are going to benefit from it. So thank you for your work, and we will see the benefits of it in the next generation that comes through here. Thank you for that trendsetter.
Mayor, one last comment, and to Commissioner Cowan's point, on helping with some of the comments that the commission's already been seen in public comment. I'm very proud to say that during my campaign, one of my most ardent critics was Mr. John Barham. And that was very public, how he went back and forth during the election. That was politics. That wasn't human nature. And John and I, I'm proud to say, consider ourselves friends now. We have lunch every few weeks. And John and I have talked about development of the Fair Practices Ordinance. And his views and his input is something that we've taken into consideration as we continue to work on this. So we're absolutely ensuring we bring people to the table to talk about opposing views.
Thanks.
So
I'm
Thank you.
so glad that conversation went that way because I thought we were going to get sued for what you were going to say.
we have many allies.
Thank you both.
Thank you, guys.
Our next item is consent agenda items 1 through 9.
I'd like to make a motion to approve, but pull out the minutes on number 1.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item number 1, the approval of minutes. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Item number 1, Commissioner.
I believe the minutes reflect an incorrect vote on the removal of Benny's from BCIC at that meeting. Minutes reflect that I voted not to.
That is definitely correct. Okay.
So I'd just like to reflect that.
Would you like to then make a motion to approve based on that change?
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Our next item is public hearings. Public hearing item number 1, public hearing in action regarding city towing rotation list application by Ricardo Rios Jr., 24/7 towing pursuant to chapter 110-63 of the City of Brownsville Code of Ordinance. Police Department.
Mayor, City Commission, this is an application from Mr. Ricardo Rios Jr. doing business as 24/7 towing. This is for a Class 1 record permit in order to be placed on the city's record rotation list. The address for the business is 6830C North Expressway here in Brownsville, Texas. Mr. Rios currently has one other record company on the city's record rotation list, which is City Record. Mr. Rios's father, Ricardo Rios Sr., is also on the police rotation list with his company, Valley Towing. Here's an aerial photo of the business, 24/7 towing. Here's also a photograph of the actual record. Police Department has conducted an inspection of the record service and will issue a permit under City Ordinance Section 110-63 to Commission approval. This is a public hearing.
Commander, how many records are on the rotation now?
Here you go. And when we start this, it's actually, with this one added, it'll be 22.
Okay, very good.
We started in October 2019 with 14.
With 20?
In October, we had 14.
Oh, 14.
And several of the record companies have gotten additional, we brought some other people in. We had a request for people coming in, and also a couple of companies have actually added some additional businesses. But it's a major task for them because they've got to get licensing, they got to get $500,000 insurance. the record, it's a business, it's a small business.
I'm just curious because there's a wrecker in my district who was asking for me to help because he was being required to have a cinder block wall. And I think all of the floor paved, all of the ground paved.
It can't, I think it's gravel, but I don't think it's paved. That's not a requirement. Now, if you'll have them get hold of me, I'll make sure to address that person.
Okay.
So that we can work with them to get them on the record rotation list.
He already is, except so he had bought like a new lot in front of an existing one, and I think he wanted to use it as an extension or I don't know. And so then the planning department was requiring a cinder block.
Okay, I'm not sure on that. I could check into that for you, but I don't have that information. So.
So but y'all just give them the license to practice, to.
This is a warning, Ms. Scope, just,
Yeah, just, you can't.
I'm sure you can,
Just,
yeah.
We actually do the inspection though. We do a check, if you go back to the checklist, you'll take a look at the checklist. We actually go through the checklist, fencing, make sure it's not just ground, it's gravel, that meets the requirements. They got a record, they got $500,000 of insurance. I mean, they have that, and they're also licensed with the state of Texas. That's our job for the police department.
thank you. Any other questions? Okay, this is a public hearing. Is there anybody here on this item?
Motion to close the public hearing?
We have a motion to close. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those
Motion to
opposed?
approve?
We have a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Item 2, public hearing and action on first reading on ordinance number 2021-9718, amendments to chapter 10 of the city code of ordinance, in particular amending section 10-1031 subsection A and B entitled Organization, Public Health Department.
Honorable Mayor, members of the commission, good evening. In summary, this public hearing and action item, first reading on this ordinance, is coming from the recommendation of the Brownsville Animal Regulation and Care Advisory Committee, who recently met on October 13th and recommend approval of this ordinance. What this ordinance would do is it would allow for subsection A to be modified to expand from 9 to 11 community citizens to be added so that every district has representation. The next section would be subsection B, that would change the number of term years from 4 years to 2 years term. And this amendment also aligns with the current Animal Regulation and Care Advisory Committee bylaws. There's no cost to this change, and staff does recommend approval.
This is, I think, the only committee I can think of that has voting members that aren't part of, I guess, that are outside of the board. Is there a reason for that?
There's some state statutes that compel us, like the veterinarian and a few other. So there's a partial state law that requires a board to be set up in a certain fashion.
Okay, so it's a requirement.
Yes.
Okay, very good.
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Well, I need to see if there's anybody here first. This is a public hearing. Is anybody here on this item? Okay,
Can I ask another question? So this though just relates to the administration of the shelter, right?
This relates strictly to the committee, that's in tune to be the advisory board for BARC.
it's the bylaws for the park. Okay, we have a motion to close. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second?
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Items for individual consideration. Item 1, consideration and action to approve a memorandum of understanding with the Children's Museum of Brownsville in the amount of $118,244.50 for its master plan as budgeted. City Manager's Office.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. I'm Elizabeth Walker in the Office of the City Manager, and I'm accompanied this evening by my friend Felipe Peña, the Executive Director of the Children's Museum of Brownsville, to present this evening an item, a memorandum of understanding with the Children's Museum to commit formally $118,244.50 because that is the half share, the other equal half contributed by BCIC towards the development of the master plan. I'll defer to Felipe to speak to that plan.
Thank you all so much for having me. I really appreciate all of your support. With this project, the museum obviously has grown tremendously over the last year, even though we were in pandemic mode, and we have so much more to set up for the future. The Ringgold has been a blessing, and we're the envy of small children's museums around the country and the state. And I know that this is a lot of money, but it's just the beginning of what the future is to hold for us. The group that we're going to work with out of Mexico City is Siete Colores. They have projects all over the world. They come recommended by the Association of Children's Museums. And we're hoping to develop something that's going to be beautiful and long lasting for our community, not only at the Children's Museum, but at the Future Science Center as well. So I hope if you have any questions, please let me know. I'd be happy to answer them.
Anybody have any questions? All right, any motions?
Motion to approve?
A motion to approve
Second.
in a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work, Felipe.
I can't wait to see it. I'll be there.
Item 2, consideration and action on the Brownsville Public Utilities Board operating transfer 50% cost share request related to bond ordinance section 19, city manager's office. And this item was tabled from the October 19th, 2021 regular meeting.
Mayor, council members, we don't have anything else to present. I will share the screen as reference to the last meeting, but the request from the council was to have PUB be present to speak to the purpose of the use of the funding and any other questions y'all may have of them. So Mayor Peruziak is here.
Yeah, thank you, Noel.
Yes, sir.
Gentlemen, welcome.
Commissioners, good to see everyone. It's in person. Finally, we get to visit. Always a pleasure to come over and see the commission and talk about. This is actually a good item. We did initiate a letter in October to Mr. Brunel on the request for the $10 million additional transfer because of the winter storm Uri. We were fortunate during the storm to generate significant offsets from sales beyond our customers of over $120 million, which the city's entitled to a percentage of that amount. That works out to around $10 million in addition to the normal transfer that we provide. And the board, we did fairly well in that event considering the rest of the state, but we did have expenses that exceeded our revenues that came in by about $35 million, which we had to fund through short-term financing with commercial paper. The board had requested, and the mayor's on the board, to ask the city, and because of our shortfall and the windfall for the city with this, is there a way we could possibly share in that $10 million transfer to help our customers, either with reduction of fuel charges that we have, they're increasing to go up, or possibly pay off some debt associated with the short commercial paper, lessen the burden eventually on the customers. That's why we're here. It's actually a good thing. We're glad we were able to get our system to run and get through the event. We're one of the few systems probably in the state that generated a surplus for their city. A lot of cities are in real trouble with the excessive cost and their facilities not operating. Our facilities did operate. I think the advantage of being a publicly owned utility. We did have some blackouts and things like that, and rolling blackouts. It was out of our control, but with that, we generated significant revenue that we wouldn't have had if the system, our system didn't operate and our plants didn't run. I probably wouldn't want to be sitting here in a different manner, but it was fortunate they did run and we have a transfer. So I'm here on behalf of the board. Mike Pettis is our chief financial officer to answer any questions on the funds. But it is, we're glad we were able to generate that and get that money to the city. And it's just a request of the board if you would consider any kind of share with that transfer. That's why we're here.
Mike, do you have any presentation or anything?
No presentation. Mr. Busick pretty much explained the situation. So we're here to answer any questions.
Any questions you might have on the letter that we sent or anything we
I think the question that I had at the last meeting was, and I understand where you guys are coming from in that expenses exceeded the revenues, but we're still looking at $5 million, whether it's in PUB's bucket or in the city's bucket. And as an elected representative of the people, I want to know who's going to make the best use of that money and show the biggest return on investment for the citizens. So I think what I was looking for or hoping you guys can tell us tonight is how PUB would use that $5 million if it was discounted.
Yeah, Mike, you want to maybe go over the options? I kind of covered it at high level, but Mike, if you
Yeah,
want
well, like Mr. Rusick mentioned, we did generate $100 million net gain from the offsets and sales. 10% of that, of course, is entitled to the city under the bond ordinance. So that's $10 million. It left PUB with $90 million in profit. But here again, and on the flip side, the customers' production costs were $122 million. Those are passed through to the customers. Our board elected to do the important thing here and say that they did not want the customers to bear any of that burden. And so they directed us to use that $90 million in profit that was generated to offset some of that cost, $122 million. Obviously, there was a shortfall. And so that's where we're asking the city commission to share in that burden cost that we're incurring right now to benefit. And of course, it benefits the customer because none of these costs were passed to the customers.
To put that in simple terms for me, and I know after the winter storm, we heard horror stories from other cities where they didn't own their own utility of customers getting bills over $10,000. That wasn't the case for Brownsville. And I know as a PUB customer, I didn't see any significant increase. So when we talk about the ratepayers are having to bear this load, what are we talking about? Help me understand that.
Okay, well, if I can kind of just make it a little bit more concise, I think what Commissioner Del Santo is asking is really, it's all about just very quickly summarizing the loss. And the loss, Commissioner, the net loss, if you offset the production minus the cost, the fuel costs, you're looking at a $35 million net loss to the utility. That cost as of now there's different ways that we're going to cover those costs, but the cost was not going to be passed on to the consumer. It's going to be kind of spread out over time. So it is a $35 million net loss to the utility that's kind of going to be paid off over a period of time, just kind of like other utilities are doing across the state. Obviously, our $35 million net loss is smaller than most. Others had huge net losses. Some of them had maybe even smaller. I'm not aware of any that may have had smaller, but I know that it's something that affected all utilities across the state for different reasons.
And most
you had production.
now are passing those costs on to they have. San Antonio's at $1 billion they owe.
In one way or another, it's being spread out. Some are spreading it out over the course of 20 or 30 years through a fuel charge, minor fuel charge. I've seen some do that. It's an unfortunate situation that occurred across the state for various reasons.
Right.
But as far as how the 5 million is going to be used, I'm not sure if you got an answer to that.
I think so.
Okay.
To help the customer, one way or the other. I mean, it's gonna benefit the ratepayer, and that's what we're gonna do with it.
Just thinking about it gives me PTSD because I didn't have power for 6 days. Just sitting here, I'm like trembling, remembering.
Yeah, it was not a good situation.
No.
If we were to have an event like that in the future, what would we do differently to better prepare ourselves, knowing?
It was to happen in December. Yes, ma'am. I'm gonna be honest with you. There haven't been
ERCOT hasn't made any changes.
there's been a lot of discussions, Commissioner, but there are zero changes to what occurred.
Might be a better question for your state legislators, Commissioner.
It's something we're gonna have to do with winterization of our plants. We're doing some things anyways, even though we're not mandated quite yet to do it. But it's a major undertaking to get to where we could stop something like that again. I'm just being honest with you. People ask me that very question, and I said it's going to be the same.
Well, thanks for being honest.
And
that's just the way. I mean, would we do some things communication-wise better and things like that? Yes, absolutely. But as far as the outages and rolling blackouts, those would occur. And there's nothing changed with winterizing the renewables. power plants existing, but there's no new generation being built on the gas side or anything like that, that can base load during these events. Nothing. There's no plans, Commissioner, of having any of that near your term. So it's gonna take a while. I think it's coming, and I'm hoping we don't have any more events like this. You know, we're gonna get some cold weather, but nothing like that.
I won't wish for snow. Not this year.
No.
The issue that I'm having, quite honestly, John and Mike, is the timing, the request. You know, had it come sooner, it might have been a lot easier. The issue that I have at this point is budget, impact on the city's budget. And I'm sure you can understand that when you set a budget, you allocate certain resources for certain things. So, and Mr. Banal, if you can kind of clue us in on the budgetary impact that it would have on the city if this request were granted, how would that impact the city?
Yeah, I think overall, I mean, I talked to John about this. I think the citizens will win at the end of the day, because the way that the commission has outlined in the 5-year plan is that any surplus funding will go to one-time capital expenses. And for us, since we have a backlog of deferred maintenance, we're basically avoiding debt to buy major equipment. In our case, we're doing major equipment. Streets is the big one. That alone is about $4 million. So essentially, we don't have to issue debt, pay interest. So there's interest savings there, right? Everything counts. So I think for us, the prudent thing that we're doing is we recognize that it's a one-time windfall and we should use it prudently. And that is to accelerate deferred maintenance items that can give us some avoidance of debt. That's the biggest thing for us. I think the other consideration is that the city is also looking to invest in PUB. We're one and the same. It's a city-owned utility, and we outline where we're making investments in water, wastewater. I don't know from a capital improvement planning perspective where PUB would have the ability to subtract other things that they're going to do and supplant that with whatever monies are going toward water, wastewater improvements, for example. I think at the end of the day, the community will win because we're getting federal funding. We're going to not issue debt to fund our infrastructure needs. PUB would reduce the cost to the ratepayers. I think overall, I mean, it's almost like a win-win all the way around. It's just that's what we dubbed it as an equity transfer, right? It's just a matter of where do you want to see the impact and the benefit to the citizens, right?
And based on some of the funding that we've received, ARPA funds, some of the money that we've received, is the city doing anything, or is the city taking on maybe any projects that may take some pressure off PUB going forward financially? Or how are we using some of that?
Yeah, the big ones are the water, wastewater lines, about 15 million. And then we valued the broadband investment that we'll be making to the middle mile at around $6 million of the 19.5 total. We just had a meeting today. We've been meeting almost weekly. And John could speak to, John, I think you guys, I don't know if you have a plan in your CIP to harden your essential facilities. I know most of your fiber is above ground. It's also like capacity to support a lot of the broadband needs for the community, but meeting with Eddie and.
Yeah, that's the thing.
I mean,
Both of those projects are beneficial to people.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, it's a good thing, the zoo improvements.
Because do you all cash fund water, wastewater, or do you also issue debt? You typically issue debt or commercial paper and then bonded.
Combination of both.
Combination. It's
So-
hard to get a large amount, you know.
Right.
With the impact fees, we can get enough, and then we'll do a big project, like you're saying, maybe 14 million or 12 million, but it takes time to accrue that amount of money.
So whatever the council decides, I would say, or the commission decides, I would say that the messaging to the community is we're being prudent all the way around, right? Whatever we do this, however you slice it, we're going to make the most wise use of those funds, city or PUB. And that should, I think, be communicated out as well. So they don't see it as we city made money and no, we're going to reduce your cost here on the rate side, or we're going to avoid that on the general fund side. The other impact, Mayor, that we talked about a lot during the 5-year plan is that we're being continually challenged by the state on the ability to raise funding. We're not seeing that on the PUB side. The state's not saying you can't increase water rates, you can't increase sewer rates. They are saying you can increase property taxes. In fact, we almost lost 2 pennies this year, 1.96 cents, because of the change in the debt collection rate formula. And then they capped us on the maintenance and operation, which is why we reduced the tax rate. Mind you, it was nominal, but you're not seeing the same, I mean, we're not seeing the same pressures on the general fund side, government side, and the PUB side. I challenge John to balance the budget with no water sewer rate increases, right? It's a different world. So I think,
We're kind of in that pickle,
We're gonna
yeah.
talk about it, yeah.
I think the revenue raising potential that we have on the PUB side, we're losing that on the general fund side. So if that $10 million can come our way and we agree that, hey, we're doing this to fund deferred maintenance because we're being hit by the state and we're being limited in our ability to raise revenues. That's another way to look at this because, again, the impacts are not equal.
Does this $10 million affect your bond rating at PUB at all?
I mean, the overall 35 million, I mean, we were downgraded by the rating agencies. Most of that impact came, the fact, the ERCOT market in itself for the whole state. You know, they're looking at utilities as, you know, because of the issues with ERCOT.
Higher risk.
Pretty much everybody, every utility in the state got downgraded.
Yeah.
But $35 million, I mean, it obviously, it does put a burden on our CIP plan, of course, because it limits our commercial paper availability for the rest of the program. We do have a $100 million program. Right now, we're at 46, we're about to issue another 7, so we'll be at 53. We got $47 million available. The plan is, once we reach around 70 million, we'll take it out long term. And at that point, start paying principal and interest on it. So it might take another year to get to that point.
I'd just like to add, just a side comment, we had the charter amendment back in May, which, mandates that we work together.
Sure.
And I look forward to meeting with you guys more often. I think it's super important. We have a lot of big decisions to make at PUB and I want to know more about it, what you guys are going through. Because it gives us more information to help you guys. So I think, I'm aware of all the big decisions that you guys have on your plate.
We have a lot of things going, and I talked to Noel recently about getting something to the commission here before the end of the year. Yeah. Come down and talk to you about our plans.
I even think, even having a set, slot on our agenda for every so often needs to be.
We talked about quarterly meetings.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing.
We can do that for sure.
That was a plan and then we kind of got sidetracked a little bit.
Yeah.
With the COVID. Sure. Yeah, we've got a lot of things we really need to bring you up to speed on. I know the mayor's up to speed on a lot of them, but some really good decisions. They're all good for the community. But we just need to work together on them. I mean, it's really good stuff. So Resaca's, things like that. Got a lot of things.
Any other questions?
Thank you, gentlemen.
I'll entertain a motion.
May I to remove needs to be removed from the table?
I'll move to remove from the table.
We have a motion to remove from the table. Do I have a second? We have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, it's off the table and open for consideration and action.
I will make a motion to deny the request.
We have a motion to deny the request. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Those in favor of denying the request?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
I'm gonna go nay, and I would like to explain why. Simply because, unfortunately, PUB doesn't represent the whole city, and there's other utility companies that service the clients. So basically, it's PUB ratepayers who are gonna finance this. So even though I see that the city's needs are important, because now that's where I represent, but basically, the PUB customers who are also our constituents are having to pay the bill, and where they're not seeing the gains from this. So that's why I'm going to vote in favor of your request. So.
Okay, the motion to deny, I believe, passes, Councilor?
Yes. Okay. You do too.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner.
Yes, thank you.
Good to see you, and we'll be back here in December, kind of give you an update on things.
Great.
Very good.
You guys.
And the sooner we can get that item that we discussed at our last meeting on the agenda, the better. As long as y'all, whenever y'all are ready.
Yeah, well, that's coming.
Okay, thank you.
That's another good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 3, consideration and action on resolution number 2021-081, providing for a transition and appointment process that will lift the temporary suspension of certain provisions of section 4.02 of the Greater Brownsville Incentive Corporation's bylaws and amending certain provisions of sections 4.02, 4.04 related to member qualifications and presentation of quarterly report. City Manager's Office.
I would like to move to table it to give Commissioner Gowan an opportunity to participate in the discussion.
Okay, we have a motion to table. There's a second,
I'll second.
a motion and a second to table. Any discussion?
Yes. Counselor, will this affect the agenda item that's still to come on filling the vacancies on the PUB board or their terms? Okay. The only thing impact this will have then is by delaying passage of this resolution that delays the start of the clock.
Correct.
Okay, we have a motion to table in a second. Is there any?
Who was the second by? I'm sorry.
Sure, Cowan. Any further discussion? Those in favor of tabling?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Item's tabled.
Item 4, consideration and action to approve resolution number 2021-080, supporting the adoption of the allocation method for opioid settlement proceeds as set forth in the state of Texas and Texas Political Subdivisions Opioid Abatement Fund Council and Settlement Allocation Term Sheet, City Attorney's Office.
Sorry, Mayor Commissioners, I had a few items today, so. Actually, this should be pretty short. There's been ongoing global litigation with the Johnson & Johnson and other distributors. Texas has received the allocation based on a preliminary settlement agreement with the state of about $1.5 billion over 18 years. Brownsville's contribution, both the base rate and the incentive rate, would be about $518,000 approximately. The base rate is about 55% from distributors, 45% from Johnson & Johnson. So that'll be that percentage out of the 518. The incentive is based on how many entities the state of Texas gets to sign on to the settlement agreement. Those are additional funds, the 45 and 55 respectively, that the city may be eligible for. The base is pretty basic. The city can apply those to any kind of any project that has a nexus to the opioid abuse, ongoing abuses with individuals, homelessness, that kind of thing. The incentive portions are going to have a few more requirements, but that's going to come in the next few years. In order to participate in the settlement agreement, the AG's office has required that we approve this resolution and also authorize the city manager to execute some settlement agreement documents.
Have any questions? All right, any motions?
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Board appointments. Item 1, consideration and action to appoint 3 city commission members to a joint City of Brownsville ISD Gladys Porter Zoo Committee to discuss zoo expansion and future of Cummings Middle School site. City Manager's Office, Office of Government and Community Affairs.
Good evening, Mayor and Commission. The City Commission, the Brownsville ISD and the Zoo Board organized a tour on August 10th and visited the CTE and the zoo. During that joint meeting, it was requested that we form a subcommittee to review the possibility. As you know, the zoo is undergoing a master plan and there's possible expansion.
And the mayor did send a letter to Brownsville ISD on August 19th, requesting that we move forward with appointing the subcommittee. At this time, we have notified and Brownsville ISD regarding our intent to now nominate our three subcommittee members and requesting that they also nominate their three and then also the zoo their three for a total of 9 subcommittee members to get this request and get this project really moving forward. So we are here today to request those 3 subcommittee members' recommendations to serve on the board.
And BISD actually did have it on their agenda, but they didn't take action, or do we know what happened?
We do not know what happened. I think they were placing it, and I don't believe it made it to the agenda, and that's why we recently reached out to them again and resent the letters that we have previously sent, and they said they were fine and they were going to look at their board agenda to place it on that.
Okay, so they'll be placing it on an agenda.
Yes.
I don't know who that,
I don't know when, which board.
okay. So then there's no formal nomination process. We can just open the floor to nominations. Okay, I would nominate Commissioner Cowan if he's willing to serve.
Sure.
Second. Or do you just nominate him or do we do first and second? Sorry.
You can do them all in one if there's no like objections. You can just take them all in once.
I'd like to serve on that.
And since both of these assets are either wholly or partially in District 3, I'd like to serve on that as well.
So I nominate the 3 of us.
So if there's a motion to that effect, you can make a motion to nominate Cowan, Tetro, and De Los Santos.
Do we know if their board chair is going to serve? Because if so, they may expect me to serve as well.
Mayor, I do not know who is anticipated to serve. All they've indicated that they would be placing it on their agenda.
Okay. All right. Do we have any motions then? Action items, Ms. Bill.
I think Commissioner Tetra made that motion.
Did you make the motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Item 2, consideration and action on resolution number 2021-076, authorizing the removal and appointment of members to the Ethics Advisory Commission, City Attorney's Office.
Mayor, Commissioners, I think there was a request to remove one of the members on the AC who's not been in attendance. And I forget.
That was my request, and that was the member who was appointed by Commissioner Munguia. And at the time of that request, I was basing that on the attendance record where he was showing 70% absence rate. Since making that request, I have had the chance to meet with staff. And in going over the records, I see also that they'd had trouble setting a regular meeting time. And we see the meetings have jumped around from noon to 2 p.m. to seems like they've found a reasonable time slot now that's more agreeable to everyone. And I have spoken to the board member as well, who's committed to being in attendance moving forward. So I was the one that made the request. I'm not going to take any action to remove Mr. Sapkis at this point.
Okay.
Nice.
I mean, this is, it's consideration and action. So
Good one.
Yeah, no action. If it's been withdrawn, there's no action.
Okay.
But do you move to withdraw though?
I'll move to withdraw.
we have a motion to withdraw. Do we need a second on that, council?
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Those opposed? Motion passes.
Item 3, consideration and action on resolution number 2021-079, appointing a replacement to fill an unexpired term on the Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone Number 4 Board of Directors. Mayor's appointment and appointment of the TERS Board Chairperson as provided in ordinance 2021-1678, Planning and Redevelopment Department.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Mayor, Commissioners, nice to see everybody today. As Ms. Morgan mentioned, we do have a vacant board position available that must be appointed by the mayor at this meeting as well. we do have the chairperson that must be appointed by the commission. I know there was discussion at the previous meeting to nominate Mr. Bradford, but no formal action was taken, so we can ratify that decision as well at this time.
Okay, yes, my appointment was initially Richard Abate, who's a banker with IBC, but I believe that they were conflicted in some way because they're involved in the financing of this, which I didn't know, obviously. So then I'm gonna go ahead and I'll make a motion to appoint Lloyd Molina to replace Mr. Abate.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. And I did speak with Mr. Molina and he is accepting the appointment.
Do we need to then also vote on the resolution?
The chair.
Ratification of Billy Bradford.
I'll move to ratify Billy Bradford as chair.
A motion, is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Item 4, consideration and action on resolution number 2021-082 to appoint 2 new members to the Greater Brownsville Incentives Corporation Board of Directors to fill existing vacancies. City Manager's Office.
Do we withdraw this because we?
I have an appointment.
Go ahead.
Yeah, but hold on, Roy. This is to fill two vacancies, but I just need to confirm that the 2 vacancies exist. I know Commissioner De Los Santos resigned. Is there another?
I was just, and this may have been my misunderstanding. I believe Commissioner Tetra was
I'll resign.
resigned as well.
To be honest, I do not think that I have even been qualified to serve on that board because I had already been there for more than 7 years. And I think that by state statute, but we had asked the last attorney and we never, I mean, we said we were gonna clarify, but I don't think we ever followed up. So to be on the safe side, and also because I don't think commissioners should even be on GBIC. But I understand we have a strategy. No offense, guys. We're a team. So, I'll go ahead and submit my resignation, but I do want my date on my plaque changed.
Okay.
I've been on this board so many
contingent?
times. Yeah,
Okay, so
have my resignation contingent on a better plaque with the new date.
so then, Commissioner De Los Santos, do you have nominations?
Yes, I nominate Anchor Jensen. Mr. Jensen has previous experience in the Brownsville Economic Development Corporation and as a head of several businesses here in Brownsville, which have been very reputable. And he is in the audience tonight.
We have a nomination for Anker Jensen. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Welcome, Anker.
Thank you.
So then Commissioner Tetro, I'll just go ahead and note that you're going to defer your,
Yeah, to the next meeting.
okay, very good.
Our next item is executive session, and I'll read the items. Item 1, closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code Sections 551.071, consultation with attorneys, and 551.087, deliberations regarding economic development negotiations related to Brownsville Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone Number 4, City Attorney's Office. Item 2, closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.071, consultation with attorney to discuss legal matters related to the city's landfill agreement, City Attorney's Office. Item 3, closed session pursuant to Section 551.71 of the Texas Government Code, consultation with city attorney. Section 551.072, discussion related to the exchange, lease, or sale of real property generally located along Paredes Line Road, Brownsville, Cameron County, Texas, and Section 551.087, economic development negotiations related to Project Zebra, City Attorney's Office.
We have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
There a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Right, recess to executive session. Thank you.
It is now 6:57 PM. Upon duly made motion, the city commission will go into
Goodbye.
And we're going back into open session.
Thank you. Now we convene from executive session and possible action on any items as discussed in executive session.
Mayor, Commissioners, as it relates to item 1 of executive session, I recommend there's no action related to that. No action related to executive session item number 2. And as to executive session item number 3, related to Project Zebra, based on discussions in executive session, it's my opinion that the commission can make a motion to approve GBIC sale of Lot 4 as discussed in executive session. If it's the commission's desire to do so, I'll entertain a motion to that effect.
Okay, you have any motions?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. We have any motions to adjourn?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? And adjourned. Thank you.
This to come before the commission upon this motion, the meeting has adjourned at 7:53 PM.